Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The New World. Thank you for joining us. And in today's video, we take our takes to the college football side and discuss this year's college playoffs and talk about some of the buzz going on with the new 12-team bracket. We have seen fans and coaches disagree and show their frustration with some of the teams that were able to make it into the playoffs this year. So before we discuss, make sure to hit that subscribe button as we're on the road to 10K subs, turn on those notifications, and comment your thoughts on the new 12-team bracket and who should or should not have made it in. Starting with Buffy, with the decision and leaving out big name schools like Alabama, Ole Miss, and Miami out of the new 12-team playoff bracket and the blowout wins in the first few games of the college playoffs. Was the committee wrong for leaving off these big teams? And do you like the new playoff format?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think the committee was wrong for, those teams not making it. I will say this, though, because Bama fans are kind of getting on my nerves. I don't think Alabama was really a great team this year. Neither do I think Ole Miss was a great team this year. So I'm not really mad that either of those teams didn't make it. Now, Miami, maybe if they won that game, they would have got in. I don't really think that, those teams really got snubbed. But I will say this, though, about the format. So I think the format could use some tuning. So I think 12 teams is a bit too much. But I think 4 teams kind of cuts off a lot. So I think what they could do, honestly, is they could just have like an 8 team, but they can just split it in half, from 4 to 8, because 4 is very limited. But you're going to get a lot of great games. And, as we've seen in the first round, these 12 format games, it's really just been blowouts. Like blowouts galore. That Penn State game against SMU, that wasn't even really a match. And, there's many talk about Boise State being third, already getting to like semis. I didn't really think that was really such a big deal. But, with a lot of these blowouts, I think it really could have been tuned down if they just had like an 8-game format where it's just 8 teams and, you just play 4 games and the last game leads up to the Natty. I think that wouldn't really be a problem. So I kind of don't really understand the outrage. Many people are going to be mad that, SEC, which SEC this year wasn't really that good. Many people would try to argue because the SEC has been on top for so long, but they weren't really that good this year. Georgia's good, Texas is good, but there isn't really somebody who's great out of the SEC, and that's kind of been on full display as we've seen this year. These blowouts have been kind of out of saying. Like when I was watching that SMU game, because I was really at work watching this shit, and I was like, bro, this shit isn't even close. Like Kevin Jennings was just throwing, like dude threw 2 pick sixes. When do you ever want to see that in a college football playoff game? You feel me? So that's my thing. And the other games, they weren't as bad as that game, but man, the Clemson game wasn't really that good. The format could use some, enhancing. Like an 8 game is kind of perfect for them because you kind of get a great blend of, you have a lot of teams that's making it, but you also have, a higher quality of teams that's going to be in there. Yeah, I think it just solves all the issues. And basically just take out the buys, because I think the buys allows when you're giving a team a bye week, these teams, they're supposed to be head up with each other. All these teams are supposed to be neck and neck and neck. You can't really grant any team any advantage that other team doesn't have. So that's my thing. If you just have no conference championships, it'll be perfect basically for the teams. You just take the best teams out of the conference. As I said earlier, the SEC was not that good. So people are saying Bama should have made it. They shouldn't have made it. Even under that format with an 8-game format, Bama would not make it. I really just want Bama fans to shut up because it's really just Bama fans. And before I pass this off to Jay, I thought it was really funny was when I was watching the Tennessee game, and Tennessee played Ohio State. And I thought it was really, really funny that Tennessee is going to try it out there, just pulling off the no shirt gimmick, we're not cold, and Ohio State basically proving it's nothing to. It's basically the Miami Dolphins gimmick that they do in the NFL. And I thought it was so stupid. I'm like, bro, every team that does this loses. Every team that does that gimmick, they lose the game. And not only do they lose the game, they get blown out. And that's what happened. The game wasn't competitive at all. I was on my phone watching it at work, and I was like, bro, they were down big early, man. It was 21-7. I was like, okay, pretty much game is over. Game is over. So, because the college football players, they're usually entertaining for the most part. Basically, the last couple of Natty games haven't really been that good, to be honest. Just from a competitive, watching standpoint. Because I remember them being some really great games, Clemson with Deshaun Watson. They had a really good game against Bama, and then Bama the next year with the game winner drive. Those back-to-back years were really, really good. I feel like we kind of been in a little drought of just great games, but I'm pretty sure we'll get that, coming down the line, especially with the elite team starting to play. We just had to get the bad teams out of the way first. But yeah, no buys at all. I think that really just eliminates, just a competitive advantage that another team has on another team, to be honest.
So for 12-team playoff bracket, I do like the idea, but so far some of the outcomes of these games have been pretty disappointing, like Notre Dame and Indiana and Penn State, knocking off SMU, and then we have Texas and Clemson and Ohio State and Tennessee. Now, I will talk about, these teams and who I kind of thought should or should not have got in. So for Indiana, especially, the fact that they got into the playoffs was kind of crazy to me. I mean, they really had a Cinderella story this year. Like, literally all the games that they won were literally the lowest scoring game that they won is 31 points. And all the other games they're winning, dropping 40, 50 balls, 60, 70 balls. And then the one actual good team they play in Ohio State, they got their bus whooped. So I really don't think that this is the team that kind of should have got in. But then when you look at Alabama and Ole Miss and Miami, they lost the games that they should have been winning. Like Alabama, they lost to Vanderbilt, they lost to Oklahoma, and Tennessee. That's understandable, but losing to teams like Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, Alabama, if you really think you deserve to get in after dropping those games like that, Alabama fans, we know how Alabama fans don't be. They always gonna want Alabama in. We know one of the biggest name, if not the biggest name, school, and when it comes to football. But Alabama fans are gonna have to take that L. And Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, he's definitely been voicing his opinion on not making it ever since they dropped the playoff bracket. Throughout the playoff games that's been going on, he's definitely been saying, tweeting different things. But Ole Miss, same goes for them. They lost to Kentucky. They lost to Florida. That's 2 games they should have won. They did lose to LSU as well. That's understandable. LSU's a ranked school, and a lot of players, a lot of NFL players, when they played in college, they said LSU was the hardest football stadium to play in. So it's understandable. But when 2 of these big schools are losing, 3 games like that, it's understandable why they didn't make it. And then Miami, they really dropped the ball when they lost to Syracuse. Losing to Georgia Tech. Those 2 games, they really shouldn't have lost. So out of all the teams, I definitely think Miami should have made it because they only had 2 losses. They should have made it over at least Indiana. Now SMU, they did win a couple of games against some big name teams, Pitt, Louisiana, but they did lose, the ACC championship to Clemson. But for them to come in there and just get dominated by Penn State, I mean, a lot of fans ain't gonna want to see it, but they have a reason for making it in. But like I said, a lot of fans aren't going to want to see a game like that. But then it also comes with the college playoffs. We've seen a lot of games, throughout college football playoffs where teams get blown out. I mean, it's nothing new, but when it's not a big name school like that, it makes sense. I don't have a problem with the playoff bracket. I do think it was kind of hilarious that, once Alabama got snubbed, the committee was already talking about making it a 14-team bracket. Like, I think it's just hilarious that they're trying their best to make sure Alabama, gets in there, which is kind of crazy. But I also do like the fact that college football is thinking about making, 2 big conferences, kind of how the NFC and AFC is. I wouldn't mind that. So far, the college playoffs have kind of been, up and down. They mainly started off down. The only really good, I guess, game was Texas and Clemson, even though Texas really was kind of dominating them, and then Clemson just, got those points in garbage time hours. But Ohio State, I mean, they dominated Tennessee. A lot of people, and my dad included, he said that Tennessee was going to win this game. I had Ohio State coming out with the dub, especially since Ohio State was getting a lot of backlash for, like the games they lost. And a lot of people were saying that they couldn't beat SEC schools, the big name SEC schools. And, they were saying that this team was just basically a pay to win team that just paid all the money to these big names, but they weren't really showing the results, which I think is kind of crazy. That was pretty wild to me. But I mean, Ohio State, they really did make a statement to me, but they made a statement in a sense because a lot of people didn't believe that they could beat big name SEC school teams. I actually do have Ohio State going all the way to the Natty. I think them and Notre Dame will face off. I think Ohio State, they play Oregon next. I do think Ohio State will beat Oregon. So hopefully they do so, even though Oregon has been playing some great ball. They've been dominating throughout college football. And I do think Notre Dame, they'll, get over. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas gets there, but I doubt they can get through Oregon. So
the seeding is kind of really weird. I think that's where most of the issue is, because now in these games you got Oregon playing Ohio State. I feel like that's kind of a bigger, Ohio State is like the 8th seed. You feel me? It's so crazy, and then you got a matchup like Boise State versus Penn State, which I think is kind of a slaughter fest. Like, that's really, really bad. That's my thing. I just think basically just the matchups are kind of weird. Like, Notre Dame being a 7, I understand that. Georgia at 2, like really. So I don't really understand their criteria. I think their criteria goes off a little bit something different. But yeah, as you said, I kind of do have a similar. I think whoever's going to win that Ohio State versus Oregon game is probably going to win it all. Yeah, because I think Texas is pretenders. I'm not really, because the quarterback is just I can't trust their quarterback, and I can't trust Georgia's quarterback, and I also can't really trust Penn State's quarterback. But I think Drew Alla, he has a bigger ceiling than those guys. So I'm basically giving him the benefit of the doubt, but yeah, I got something similar. I got Notre Dame versus Oregon.
My problem with this conversation, my problem with many conversations that induce change. You have something different, you have a new format, niggas gonna feel some type of way about it if it does not go their way. What I was saying to you guys before we started this video is there are some stats to prove that all of this prisoner of the moment like behavior that all of the fans are having over social media doesn't really have any merit. In the past decade, average margin of victory in the CFP in the semifinals was 17.9 points. The national championship game was 20 points. Blowouts have been happening every single damn year. 60% of games have been decided by 3 or more scores. So blowouts is part of it. I think the problem is the fact that since there are more games, there are more blowouts. So people want to have a gripe about it now. That's really the only issue. So like in this first round matchup that we've had, average point differential was 19.3 points. So that's on brand. That's on par with what we have seen. I'm indifferent about the current format. I think the 12-team format is okay. It's cool. But like I said, we've been having blowouts for the past decade and probably longer than that. This is nothing new. It's just the fact that now we have more games. We have more blowouts. Very common knowledge, very easy to comprehend and to understand. However, I do like, and I have been hearing this, what Jay said, of just having 2 big conferences, because the problem is the fact that it's subjective. Whoever's team is getting put in this bracket is subjective. We have a committee that's voting on this. Whereas if we have NFL, we already have rankings. We already know who's going to be there. You can't really gripe or have some type of way about it if your team doesn't get in, because they'll be in these 2 conferences. And they'll be ranked based on the standings because everybody's going to have to play each other. I think the problem with college football is just that there's a whole bunch of teams. There's just a lot of teams. So it's kind of hard to put them in 2 big conferences. But I think that's what you're going to have to do if you want to get rid of all of this controversy. But at the end of the day, I think that the committee, college football, likes this. They like the fact that people are fan bases. They feel some type of way about their team not getting in. That's a part of the allure. It's business. We have to remember at the end of the day that it's business. So it's going to be hard. If you're not a fan of the blowouts, then I don't really know what to tell you, because I don't think anything is going to change the fact. Some games are going to be close, but for the most part, historically, these games are going to be blowouts. They are. So I don't know what you guys want about that. But if you guys want to see your team, if you got some type of, they want SEC teams to be in, and we all know that SEC teams got a lot of clout. Those boosters, they're donating a lot of money to those colleges. This is a business, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't realized that by now, either you're lacking some brain cells or you just are being delusional. This is just a business. This is the way that things are going to operate. Now, I will say I like the fact that some of these quote unquote lesser schools got in, because you can't have 5-6 SEC teams in a playoff bracket. You can't, because if everybody had it their way, if the casual fan had it their way, when we had the 4-team bracket, then we would just have all SEC teams, and we know that we cannot do that. The only outlier that people will probably throw in would be like a Michigan or Ohio State. We can't do that. So this is how you provide competitiveness as well as providing fairness, by having different teams there. That's not equating to the blowouts. If we had more SEC teams, I'm pretty sure there would still be blowouts. That's just kind of how this stuff works. This is football. It's not basketball. It's a lot easier to have a blowout because all you got to do is just go with 2 scores. 2 scores is considered a quote-unquote blowout, 14 points. That's the situation. In my opinion, it's not really that big of a deal, because by the time we get to the conference finals or the semifinals, whatever the hell they're calling this shit, niggas will still be watching and niggas will still be betting on it. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like I do like what Mal said about the committee kind of doing this as a smart strategy, because if you think about it, snubbing out Alabama, Ole Miss, Miami, it's gonna have fans heated. So then of course they're gonna want to tune in and watch Indiana versus Notre Dame, because they want to see, oh, was their decision worth this? So they're gonna want to tune in and watch that game. Same as Penn State at SMU. So that is a smart strategy. But I do think what the committee kind of did do wrong was with the seeding. I do agree with what Caleb said. I do think they kind of would have been better off, seeding SMU versus Indiana or something like that, because some people don't really like the blowouts. But then again, you also got to deal with that at some point, because like we said, there's been blowouts throughout college football playoff history. So that's something you're going to have to, deal with, and it's a reoccurring event.
There are blowouts every damn year. Like that's
exactly
that's
see
the thing with college football.
Yeah,
like that's how niggas get ranked higher. It's about style points. It's about style.
Alabama blew out
First of all,
Notre Dame in like 2021.
First of all, I don't even know why people are bringing up Alabama and Ole Miss, because literally South Carolina are better than like these teams. So I don't even understand why people are bringing up 3 lost teams, and literally Tennessee was in there. So you already have enough SEC teams in there at all. So I don't really get the push that these other schools are really getting, because they literally weren't even that good this year. Really, just my thing about the seeding is that if you're gonna have it like this, why is Oregon basically playing the best team? Oregon was awarded the 1 seed, but they're playing basically the best team that didn't get a bye, which is Ohio State, in my opinion. Why are they basically playing them? That's why I don't really get it.
I think it's their first time figuring it out, because you got to think about this, guys. There are so many teams that are involved with the decision-making process for who is going to get in, and they only play 12 games. So basically, it's about style points. It's about how people win. That's how they factor in who is ranked higher than whoever. That becomes a problem because of the subjectivity. It's really hard for them to quote-unquote get it right, and they'll probably never get it right. But they're especially not going to get it even close to right on the first try. You feel me? So that's what I think. I think that people are just in their feelings a little bit because their favorite team didn't get in. And when they see blowouts, they're going to be like, oh, well, why does this team get to get in instead of my favorite team? They got their ass kicked by 30. We're going to get that with every team, in my opinion.
I am the fucking hardest hustler in the world. This is Savage Part 2. Don't tell me about shit.